Do you feel a draft? Do you... or on the knees?
Probably no separate provision at all. And certainly no respectful relation.
Miss Woodhouse.
So we have Emma. I forgive the wardrobe here. Look, I'm going for popped collars. I don't have like a white shirt with a circling collar, but I got this, I got that. It's all popped. So anyhow, we have Emma, released in 2020. I don't know if many people know about this. It's not gotten, as far as I can tell, as much press as Little Women, being the Oscar contender that was. And since this movie also leans more heavily into its comedic side, I suppose the Academy and other such critics may not take it as seriously. But I'm going to go ahead and preface the review by saying this. I really liked Emma. I actually kind of loved Emma. I'm not normally a big drama or melodrama guy, but I liked Emma a lot more than I liked Little Women. Not to say that Little Women was bad or I didn't like Little Women, but Emma was really great. Emma, if you don't know, is based off of the book by Jane Austen published in 1815 called Emma. And it's basically about the whole ideology behind the book is youthful hubris, incidental, funny, like romantic situations where it's like, I thought you liked this boy. I just say I like this man. Well, I also like this man. It comes across very well in this film adaptation. Now, granted, I will preface this by saying, such like with Little Women or Call of the Wild, I never read the book that Jane Austen wrote. Maybe someday I will. So I went into this virtually blind as to a majority. I knew the setting and the characters kind of, but I didn't know what the plot was going to be like or what was going to happen. So went in a little bit blind, but caught on pretty quickly to what they were aiming for. And I will say from the top down, they succeeded massively in trying to get those themes across and make an enjoyable film in the process. To start off with, this is the oddest thing. The director, Autumn de Wilde, I believe that's how you say his name. It'd be weird to be like Autumn D. Wilde, but I believe it's like Autumn de Wilde. I went on to IMDb for a little research, and main filmography is like shorts, unless I'm mistaken. And I'll throw a few up here, but this almost seems to be his first feature-length film. I will say, he did an absolutely fantastic job. The film looks great. It's bright but subdued. It's vibrant and yet subtly so. One of the best parts about this movie that I personally enjoyed, maybe it's almost kind of like how sounds do it for ASMR people, visuals really do it for me for a pleasing experience, and the color palette used in this film, where it's, like I said, it's bright but not like bright in your face. It's just a very vibrant palette that's very pastel, and the color schemes in this film all just looked, it was just so pleasant. It was just visually a very pleasing film, whether they were outside in environments, a rainy overcast day, just inside, outside these enormous mansions or these houses and the environments, whatever they were all very well lit. The color composition was just there, and it was pleasing to the eye, and it made for a very enjoyable viewing experience. Going off of that, the direction worked. I mean, it was all very well shot. No shots ever seemed like weird or out of place. It all worked for the film. I really enjoyed how the film went from having mostly pretty medium shots to like either medium shots or like more establishing shots for these big locations, but just overall, but then they reserved these close shots for the more intimate scenes when things started kind of, getting down to brass tacks and there were feelings being confessed or emotions on the line or people being hurt by another person verbally. Like, it would always kind of bring it in whenever there was a more intimate setting. It would bring the cameras would be closer in on people's faces and such. And it's just a little thing where if you know film or have seen a lot or work on film, you recognize it. But your average moviegoer who isn't familiar with all of that might just be, it just works and they won't even notice that it's working, if that makes any sense. Sound design, not a whole lot of craziness in that department for this movie. Just the sound all comes across very clear. When it comes to acting, I have no qualms with anybody's performance in this movie. Dude, every character I didn't even know these characters until I met them in this movie, and even the ones that like weren't meant to be ones you liked or were particularly fond of, everybody embodied the character wholeheartedly. And I will say this one thing. I'm very biased, and it's going to come off really probably creepy, but I just got to say, Anya Taylor-Joy is stunning as an actor.
I say actor, not actress, because the word actress is nonsensical.
As the characters that she always plays, like, you get lost in it's like Emma Stone. You just get lost in those eyes, and then the performance she brings across to every character, whether it's, something like Split, and there's that fear, or whether it's something like this, and there's that she's youthful, but also you can tell there's like reluctance, there's pity, there's lust. She is a phenomenal actor that in every film that she's been given is able to bring these emotions across seemingly without breaking a sweat. And even more so in this, I have never known the character of Emma in the context of Jane Austen's book, but in the context of this movie, Emma, I couldn't think of somebody who might be able to play it better. She handled it so well, and she was I don't want to say she was the crux of the film, but she is the pivotal main character, and watching her character arc was honestly very entertaining and was a joy, and it was just a very enjoyable just a watch, like everything from dialogue to the quips to the wit, like it was great. Now I don't want to sell anybody else short, like everybody else did a good job with what they had. There's a long cast of actors that I don't recall all their names off the top of my head, and we'd be staying here for minutes if I went down the list, but everything worked. And I will say, as another aside, I'm probably going to get his name wrong, but Bill Nighy, I think it's like Bill Nighy, but he's been in the game for a while. He's always been great, but in this movie, he is a master of subtlety and physical comedy. I don't know what it was. I went to go see this again with the franchise, and every time that he's on screen, we just started chuckling because he does such a great job of just how he always seems displeased and just always carrying himself to a certain composure. But like, so, do you feel a draft? So there's a draft right around the knees. Yes, quite. Yeah. Well, we must get out of here. It's like a scene in the middle, and they're all this one guy's trying to make conversation at the table, and he's like, "It might snow later," and then Bill Nighy's character, the husband's like, "Dear God," and like they all start freaking out. He's like, "It's gonna snow. We'll be stuck here. We must get out of here. We must go." And on the way out, he's like running and trying to get to the carriage, and he's like, "Yo, your husband, he is very weak." It's like, it was great. He was a delight to watch on screen as well. But then again, so was everybody. Oh, it's another point to make, is that the comedy wasn't overbearing. There were a lot of comedic moments, but it was well tied in my mind with the dramatic bits and with the serious character moments. Like the comedy knew when to be present, when to bring itself in, when to kind of come naturally from the character, and then when to take a back seat to the narrative and the story that was then going forward. The comedy worked really well with this movie. The soundtrack was nice. It was very pleasant, your typical orchestrations, and they were actually kind of light on the soundtrack. They only came in with the music during certain transitional scenes or certain moments. There was like a wonderful scene. You'll know it when you've seen it, but there's a bunch of dancing going on in an indoor location. And between the music and the dancing and how the characters interact with each other, all the characters that are actually like falling in love with each other in the movie do have a great genuine chemistry on screen, and it all works out very well to everybody's betterment. The only downsides to this movie that keep it from being, in my mind, a perfect film, I don't know what it was about the opening, like the first act, it took me a minute to kind of get into it. Again, maybe like I might be biased, and this is just kind of my personal viewing experience, but the first 5-10 minutes or more, so like it was a little bit shaky, and I was trying to kind of piece together what was going on. I was trying to get into it, but definitely within the first half an hour, I was in it for the long haul. I feel like the movie could have been a little bit shorter. Definitely not as badly as Little Women, because Little Women, definitely I thought you could have cut like a good 20-30 minutes out of that, and it would have been all right. But with this movie, I think it's just, shaving off a little bit of the fat, could have been like a few moments you could have cut out to make for make it to be slightly better, but not enough to greatly detract from the film as it is overall. Honestly, I don't have much in the way of many complaints about this film. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's weird. I didn't find it to be perfection. I still had some like gripes about it here and there. So, but for all those reasons and whatnot, overall, I have an overwhelmingly positive view of this film. I thought in my mind, it succeeded where perhaps Little Women missed the mark for me. And for that reason, I actually give Emma, released in 2020, a solid, strong 4 out of 5. This is a near perfect film to me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, much more than I thought I was going to. But yeah, overall, this was a near perfect film. Just a couple things holding it back for me, mainly the beginning of the movie. This is a little iffy for me, and I feel like it could have been cut down a tiny little bit, just a few superfluous scenes. But overall, if you're a fan of period pieces, melodramas, or that are also a comedy, and a really decent cast to back this one up, I recommend going to see it. If period pieces bore you, probably not your cup of tea, but as a movie overall, just sit down and watch. Doesn't matter if you're with the guys or with the girls or both or what have you. Like, I thought it was a pretty damn near perfect film. Very fantastic. I honestly, at this current rate, I think Emma is definitely on my top 10 for the year so far. It surprised me with how very much I enjoyed this movie. So, by all means. And there's some lessons to be learned, and it was interesting to see like things from Emma's perspective, but also there's a lot to be learned from that. Someone who, when you're young and you're raised in that type of environment and you look on certain people one way and other people another, it helps to put things in perspective when you can kind of, it's the youthful hubris, again, like I said before, to be able to recognize that and to be able to grow from that is what you want to, hopefully achieve. But I digress. I'm not here to do a video essay on the youthful arrogance and hubris of the 1800s. By all means, if you agree or disagree, comment below. Nobody ever does, but hell, give me hell. And if you have any other movies or TV shows you want me to review, by all means, go for it. But yeah, that was my review for Emma, released in 2020 this year. Stay tuned for the next movie review that I do. And goodbye, travelers.